The Arizona sun was a brutal, unblinking eye, bleaching the sky and baking the stucco walls of our subdivision into inert slabs of beige. My life, at 47, felt much the same, bleached, predictable, comfortably inert. My husband, Robert, was a good man, a successful financial planner whose conversations had gradually narrowed to market trends, golf handicaps, and the quiet, efficient maintenance of our lives. Our love, once a vibrant tapestry, had faded into a serviceable, well-worn quilt, warm enough, but lacking any arresting pattern. Our son, Ethan, was my greatest joy and now, at 18, my most poignant reminder of time's passage. With his college departure looming in the fall, the house already echoed with a phantom silence. That summer, he spent most of his time out with his girlfriend or holed up in his room, emerging only with the urgency of a teenager in need of sustenance. His best friend, however, seemed to be a permanent fixture in our living room. Liam, 20 years old, with a calmness that belied his age, he was studying automotive engineering at the community college. Ethan had met him in a robotics club years ago, and Liam had become the quieter, steadier shadow to Ethan's more exuberant light. With shaggy, sand-colored hair that constantly fell into his eyes and hands that were always slightly grease-stained, he had a quiet courtesy about him that I appreciated. He called me Mrs. Henderson, always helped clear the table without being asked, and his presence was as unassuming as a piece of well-built furniture. One Tuesday, my predictable world developed its first crack. Robert was away at a week-long conference in Chicago, and my ancient Prius, a faithful companion for a decade, emitted a terminal-sounding shudder and refused to start in the grocery store parking lot. Flustered, I called roadside assistance, dreading the hours-long wait in the heat. On a whim, I texted Ethan. He was across town, but he replied instantly, "Liam's closer. He's got tools. He'll be there in 10. True to his word, a dusty, deep blue pickup truck pulled up beside me 9 minutes later. Liam stepped out, giving me a shy, reassuring smile. Ethan talked me through the symptoms. Mrs. H. Sounds like the alternator. Mind if I take a look? I watched, leaning against the hot metal of my car, as he lifted the hood. He moved with a focused, unhurried efficiency. His hands, broad and capable, probed the engine with a confident gentleness. There was no frustration, no muttered curses, just a quiet dialogue with the machine. "Yep," he said finally, wiping his forehead with the back of his wrist, leaving a faint smudge. "It's the alternator. I can replace it, but not here. I can tow you to my place. My garage has all the parts. It'll be way cheaper than a shop." Grateful and relieved, I agreed. He rigged up a tow with a quiet competence that brooked no argument. His place was a small, converted garage apartment behind an older house. The space was compact but astonishingly orderly. One side was a neat living area with a sofa, a small desk covered in textbooks, and a shelf of classic novels interspersed with automotive manuals. The other side was a professional-grade workshop, spotlessly organized, smelling of metal, oil, and clean solvent. As he worked, I perched on a stool, sipping the lemonade he'd offered. The silence wasn't awkward but strangely peaceful, filled only with the soft clink of tools. We began to talk, not about Ethan, or school, or the weather, but about things I realized I'd stopped discussing with anyone. He asked, with genuine curiosity, what I'd studied in college literature. He saw the title of a book on my passenger seat and mentioned he'd just finished it, offering an insight about the protagonist that was so perceptive it left me momentarily speechless. He spoke about engines not just as machinery, but as systems of harmony and balance. He listened, truly listened, his steady hazel eyes fixed on me, making me feel like my thoughts were the most important thing in the world. When the car was fixed, in under an hour, he refused any payment. "You feed me half the week, Mrs. H." This was on the house. He smiled, and it was a different smile than the polite one he used at our dinner table. It reached his eyes, crinkling the corners, and for the first time, I didn't see my son's friend. I saw Liam, a kind, intelligent, strikingly capable young man. That encounter was a pebble dropped into the still pond of my existence. The ripples were subtle but pervasive. I found myself noticing the empty quiet of the house when neither Ethan nor Liam were there. I started cooking meals I knew Liam particularly enjoyed, just to hear his appreciative, "This is amazing, Mrs. H." I looked forward to the evenings he stayed for dinner, hanging back after Ethan dashed off, helping me tidy up. Our conversations deepened. We debated authors. He played me fragments of music he was composing on his guitar, another revelation, and he once asked, with heartbreaking sincerity, "Do you think it's possible to build a life that doesn't just run smoothly?" But actually, sings? The question echoed in my bones. My life ran smoothly. It did not sing. The tension, the unspoken thing, became a third presence in the room. It was in the way our hands would almost brush when I passed him a dish, in the way he'd hold my gaze a second too long, in the electric awareness that hummed beneath the surface of our perfectly polite interactions. I was terrified of it, and yet, I nurtured it like a forbidden, fragile bloom. The catalyst came on a Friday evening. Robert was, again, working late. Ethan was at a concert with his girlfriend. A violent monsoon storm lashed the city, knocking out the power in our neighborhood. The house plunged into a thick, humid darkness, punctuated by the frantic drumming of rain. I fumbled for candles, my heart pounding with the primal fear of the sudden isolation. My phone lit up. A text from Liam, who lived only a few blocks away. Power's out everywhere. You okay over there, Claire? It was the first time he'd used my first name. The single word on the screen felt more intimate than a touch. My fingers trembled as I typed back, a little startled. It's very dark. My place has a generator for the workshop. You're welcome to wait it out here. I have light and coffee. It was an offer from a friend, a kind one, but we both knew it was a threshold. I stared at the message for a full minute, the candlelight casting frantic shadows on the wall. Every responsible cell in my body screamed to stay put. But another part, a part that had been sleeping for 20 years, whispered a single, compelling word, live. I'll come over, I typed, and pressed send before I could reconsider. The short drive through the lashing rain felt like crossing an ocean. He was waiting at the door, silhouetted by the warm, golden light of gas lamps and battery-powered lanterns from his workshop. He took my dripping jacket, his fingers brushing my shoulder. The apartment was a cocoon of light and warmth in the chaotic, wet darkness. I made tea, he said, his voice softer than usual. Or something stronger, if you prefer. We sat on the small sofa, the storm raging a few feet away, a dramatic soundtrack to the stillness inside. We talked, but the words were just vessels carrying something else entirely, the charge in the air, the shortening distance between us on the couch. He told me about his childhood, about a father who left, about a mother who worked 3 jobs, about finding solace in taking things apart and putting them back together, in making broken things work again. You make me feel that way, he said finally, the words hanging in the lamplight. Like I've been running on a quiet, faulty engine for years, and just being near you, tunes it. Tears, hot and sudden, pricked my eyes. Liam, I'm 47. I have a husband, a son, your best friend. I know, he said, his gaze unwavering. And I've fought this every day since I first really saw you in that grocery store parking lot. I know the math. I know the rules. But my heart doesn't seem to understand any of that. He leaned closer, not touching me, but letting me feel the heat of him. Do you feel this, Claire? This thrill? This connection? Or is it just me? It was the word thrill that undid me. It was the perfect, terrifying word for the seismic shift happening inside me. It was an unexpected, profound, and devastating thrill. It's not just you, I whispered, the confession tearing something loose inside me. He didn't kiss me then. He did something far more intimate. He slowly reached out and took my hand, turning it palm up in his own. He traced the lines of my palm with his work-roughened thumb, his head bent, studying it as if it were the most complex and beautiful blueprint he'd ever seen. The touch was a lightning bolt of pure sensation, arcing through years of emotional dormancy. It was a touch that saw me, not Claire the wife, Claire the mother, Claire the hostess, but the woman beneath, who still longed, still dreamed, still felt a wild, passionate pulse in her veins. That touch was the beginning and the end. We crossed a line that night, not physically, not fully, but emotionally, irrevocably. We sat for hours, hands clasped, talking, confessing, building a world in that lamplit bubble that excluded reality. When the power finally surged back on, flooding the room with a harsh, clinical light, it felt like an expulsion from Eden. The following weeks were a torture of exquisite agony. The secret hung between us, a sweet, heavy poison. Every shared glance at the dinner table was laden with meaning. Every casual goodbye, Mrs. Henderson, was a caress and a lie. The guilt was a constant, gnawing companion. I looked at Robert, kind, dependable, oblivious Robert, and was swamped with shame. I looked at Ethan, my beautiful, trusting boy, and felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to steady myself. The climax, when it came, was not a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet, devastating moment of clarity. Liam had come over to help Ethan with a project. I was in the kitchen, pretending to organize a cupboard, my entire body humming with awareness of his presence in the next room. I heard Ethan laugh, aloud, joyful, innocent sound. It hit me like a physical blow. I walked to the doorway and watched them. They were bent over a laptop, shoulders touching, brothers in all but blood. Ethan trusted Liam implicitly. He trusted me. In that moment, I saw not the thrilling, passionate man who made me feel alive, but my son's beloved friend. I saw the wreckage that this thrill would cause, the betrayal that would shatter my family, the friendship it would destroy, the innocent lives it would scorch. The fantasy, for all its intensity, was just that, a fantasy. It was built on stolen moments and the intoxicating rush of feeling seen. But it wasn't a life. It was a beautiful, painful, selfish dream that would incinerate everyone in its path, starting with my son. Later, as Liam was leaving, he lingered at the door, his eyes searching mine, full of unasked questions and desperate hope. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Liam, I said, my voice steady but barely audible. What you've given me, this feeling, I will treasure it, and I will regret it, for the rest of my life. But it has to end, right now. Ethan can never know. Robert can never know. His face crumbled, but then hardened into an understanding mask of profound sorrow. He nodded slowly. The cost is too high. Yes, I breathed, the word a final, painful exhale. The cost is everything that is real. He left, and I closed the door softly on the most intense, unexpected thrill I had ever experienced. I sank to the floor, tears finally coming in silent, heaving waves. I wept for the loss of him, for the woman he awoke who had to be put back to sleep. I wept for the guilt, and for the profound, aching loneliness that I knew would now be my constant companion, even in my own full house. The story doesn't have a happy, romantic ending. It has a responsible one. Liam, to his immense credit, honored my decision. He gently distanced himself from Ethan, citing a heavy course load and a new part-time job. The distance was painful but necessary. Ethan was sad but accepting, his life already naturally expanding beyond high school friendships. Robert and I began marriage counseling. I haven't confessed the specifics of my emotional infidelity. Some truths are grenades that destroy without cleansing, but I have confessed to a deep loneliness, a disconnect. We are working, slowly, painfully, to rebuild a connection. Sometimes I see a flicker of the man I fell in love with. Sometimes the quilt of our life feels a little warmer. And sometimes, when I'm alone, driving my perfectly functioning Prius, I allow myself to remember the scent of oil and solvent, the feel of a work-roughened thumb on my palm, and the thrilling, terrifying question in a young man's